Hello, this is Brian. Today is Sunday, October 17, 2021. I am here on Sherman Pass Road, maybe about a half a mile from Sherman Pass Vista Point area. So I'm here in the Kern Plateau region of the southern Sierra Nevada, Sequoia National Forest, and I want to present a Spotlight on Trees video today. Today's Spotlight is on Critchfield Red Fir. It is a variety of Abies magnifica. It's a variety of California red fir. Abies magnifica, variety Critchfieldii. And I'll explain why I'm using the varietal name variety Critchfieldii momentarily. But we are in a basically monotypic stand of red fir. So we are in the red fir belt of the Sierra Nevada. We're well above 8,000 feet. We're probably close to 9,000 feet over here. And there are spots here that are nearly monotypic stands of red fir. So red fir is a very common to abundant species of fir tree here in the southern Sierra, up the Sierra Nevada. As far south as the Sunday Peak area in the Greenhorn Mountains of extreme northern Kern County. We're in Tulare County, and we are just in the thick of red firs. Magnificent trees. The epithet magnifica means obviously magnificent in Latin, and these are magnificent trees. They can get very large. Generally they are large to very, very large evergreen conifers, in other words cone-bearing trees in the pine family, the Pinaceae. And they are in the section Abietoideae, the firs. A-B-I-E-T-O-I-D-E-A-E. So red fir is one of two species of fir that grows in the southern Sierras. You have this one, Abies magnifica, and then you have Abies concolor variety Lowiana, which is the white fir, the Sierra or California white fir. Red fir typically grows mostly above 6,500 to 7,000 feet and up, especially this far south. We're about 36 degrees latitude here in Tulare County, so you normally would have to go mostly above 7,000 feet to see them, though they do occasionally dip a little below it. And firs often form many multi-acred stands of just about pure trees. So now the fact that we have two fir trees here in the southern Sierras might lead to some confusion as to how do you tell them apart. Well, sometimes they can be quite similar. Similar shapes, you know, narrowly tapering, like this magnificent specimen here. So from a distance, they can look quite similar to white fir. However, one of the main clues is in the bark. This is the mature bark of Abies magnifica, right here. It has that reddish hue to it. That's where the name comes from, the common name. These trees here in the Sierras, they can get up to about 200 feet in height, and a lot of these trees are over 150, 160. Some of them are probably closer to 180 feet tall. Might be some that are even a little taller. So a lot of botanists just label it Abies magnifica as the red fir going up and down the Sierra Nevada. Some botanists divide Abies magnifica into varieties. And it gets complicated. The nomenclature of this plant can get very complicated, especially for people not super deep into all the craziness that comes with botanizing. The Sierra Nevada seems to have different types of red fir depending on where they're growing and the cone scale structures. That's where things get a little interesting. So, there are red firs up in far northern California that might potentially be of hybrid origin, I believe, with Abies procera, the noble fir. I think it's a hybrid between noble fir and Abies magnifica, and some label that Abies X, the X mark for hybrid, Abies shastensis. Other people call it Abies magnifica variety shastensis. And like I said, I think it's the noble fir with which they hybridize that might create that confusion as to whether it should be Abies magnifica variety shastensis or Abies shastensis. That's in far northern California. Their seed cones have bracts on the edge of them. Little bracts that protrude from the edge of the cone scale. It's really hard to get a good detail of cones because they're, like most fir trees, the cones are in a higher upper third of the crown, usually. Except every now and then you'll get a branching leader that'll come up from below and curve up, and sometimes you'll get lucky and see cones up close. That's extremely rare, at least in my experience. Critchfield Red Fir is another variety here in the southern Sierra that, well, some people recognize it as a separate variety or even subspecies. That would make this Abies magnifica variety or subspecies I'm sorry. Abies magnifica variety critchfieldii. Abies magnifica variety critchfieldii. I apologize for that little mix-up. That's what our southern Sierra population would be here in the Kern Plateau, likely Sequoia National Park. Now, they also have cone scales with little bracts sticking out from them. A little bit different than the Shasta ones, but I think these have also been labeled at one point as variety shastensis, but other botanists like Ronald Lanner and Michael Kaufman call these variety or subspecies critchfieldii. That's the southern Sierra population. So they also have a bract coming out from the cone scale. The regular Abies magnifica or Abies magnifica variety magnifica doesn't have that little bract coming out. So here's a fallen cone. I got lucky here. I found a fallen cone. This is about the shape and the size of an Abies magnifica cone in general. But as you notice here, very rarely will you find a relatively intact cone on the ground, because once these ripen, usually all these cone scales are going to fall off and come down to the forest floor. As you can see down here, these right here, these little brownish things, those are cone scales that have broken off and fallen to the forest floor. So here is an individual cone scale. Here's an individual cone scale right here. And you have, on this side, you have two winged seeds. And you see a little papery thing coming out here. That's the bract I'm talking about. That's the little bract. The regular Abies magnifica in the middle and northern Sierra tend to lack that. The ones in the southern Sierra, if you look on this cone again, see these little light brown protrusions. These little light brown things here. These are the bracts. I believe the ones on the population of Shasta fir or Shasta red fir, I believe their bracts are pointier, I think. I've never seen one of those trims. I've never been up in that part of California yet. But they have bracts as well, but their bracts, I think, are a little narrower and pointier, I think. Don't quote me on that, but they also have bracts that come out from the cone scales. And when these cones are still ripe and green on the tree, if you can see one close up enough, you'll see the cone scales will be light green, and then the little round bracts that come out from them will be even a lighter green. So you can see here, all these light green, these lighter things, these are all the bracts coming down from the cone scales. So surprisingly, here's a relatively intact red fir cone. The ones I believe in the middle Sierra, I believe are not supposed to have the bracts. So this is kind of an oddity of our southern population to have these rounded bracts coming down from the cone scales. There is a slight point at the tip of them, though. If you look, mostly round, but they do taper off at a point. Well, like I said, I think the Shasta population might be narrower, but then again, all I know is that they have bracts that come out from their cone scales, and so do these ones that are often called variety critchfieldii. So, the habitat of a red fir, usually the mid to upper montane conifer belt. Like I said, we're about 9,000 feet in elevation right now, and they go down, like I said, they go down to about 7,000, and they go up to about, they can go up to at least 9, maybe 10,000 feet. And then right where we are seems to be the honeymoon zone for them, because this is where some of these trees reach the greatest size that I've seen. I've seen these trees on a few occasions coming up here to the southern Sierras, but again, this reddish brown bark that sometimes flattens out in very, very, very narrow plates with age. This reddish tinge is basically your cue as to this being a red fir versus being a white fir. And white fir, I thought I saw some evidence of white fir. I thought I saw white fir seeds on the ground when I was coming over here to film. But let's see if I can find a good seed on the ground. I can show you what the seed looks like. Let's see here. Oh, I dropped it. Ah, crud. Let's see if I can find a really good looking red fir seed. Here we go. Red fir seed. You can see the seed here and a reddish brown wing. And it's very similar on both sides. This year seemed to be a very good red fir seed year because there are scores and scores of red fir seeds and cone scales all over the forest floor. But that's your red fir seed. It's got a broad wing and a relatively narrow tip. Sometimes the seed itself is a little fatter. So that seed right there, the seed and the wing, lightweight, enables the tree seeds to disperse in the winds. And I imagine these mountains probably get very windy. So, what does red fir grow with in these forests? There are spots where red fir is often a monotypic stand. There are stretches along the Sierra Nevada where this tree forms relatively monotypic stands, maybe with a few other interlopers. But often you're going to find with red fir, the lower and middle part of the red firs, you're going to find often Jeffrey pine. And the lower part, you'll see white fir, Abies concolor variety Lowiana. You'll often see western white pine mixing in with these red firs. You can see, sometimes in meadow areas, you'll see Sierra lodgepole pine, Pinaceae contorta subspecies Mariana. You'll see, on the understory of these trees, you'll often see this guy here. This is Ceanothus cordulatus. This is mountain whitethorn. And I did a spotlight about that in Angeles National Forest in, near Big Pines, so you want to check that out. And then one thing about fir trees, they reproduce like crazy. Same thing is true with the white firs. Red firs reproduce, so you're going to see tons and tons of seedlings and saplings in a lot of spots. We're going to go right over here to this thicket right here. These are all young red firs. All young red firs. They can come up by the scores. They can germinate like crazy, and they can grow like crazy. So, if you're going to be in red fir territory, you're really going to see lots and lots and lots and lots of red fir. So the trees seem to be very fertile, and they seem to reproduce quite a bit. But just look at these magnificent specimens here. This is, of course, here in the southern Sierras, according to Ronald Lanner and Michael Kaufman. These would be Abies magnifica variety Critchfieldii. Again, the cone scales have bracts sticking out of them. So when you're 7,000 feet and higher, keep a lookout for these guys. So if you want to differentiate them from white fir, especially where you'll find them growing together, the bark on the white fir is grayer. Definitely grayer and more deeply furrowed at times. But younger trees are not quite as, obviously not going to be as mature, so young red firs might be kind of similar. Kind of look similar when they're young to pretty much any species of fir, except maybe bristlecone fir in the coast ranges of California. I've never seen one of those, so that's a spotlight for way another time. But they have these things called resin blisters, these little resin pockets. Very common on younger trees. They got these smooth gray stems, and this one's starting to get some light furrowing, but the bark hasn't darkened enough yet. So yeah, red firs. One thing about red firs I notice when they're younger, their branching pattern maybe is slightly more intricate and slightly more formal than white fir. And of course, that's not the most useful diagnostic feature in identifying younger trees, but that might help. Here's another cone. Here's another cone, again with the bracts. You can see all those bracts. So sometimes the branching might be a little more intricate on red fir, and then the trees might look a little more formal when they're younger. But like I said, that's not the most helpful diagnosis to separate white and red fir. My usual way is looking at these reddish brown trunks, and I don't see any white firs actually growing over here to differentiate them. But look at that, magnificent trees here in the southern Sierra Nevada. Again, this is what an immature cone looks like. Oh, it's approaching maturity. Again, light to medium green scales, lighter green bracts. That's how you know this one is the Critchfield Red Fir here in the southern Sierras. So it's basically going to do it for me. I hope you enjoy this spotlight on red fir. I hope you enjoyed this spotlight from Central California as opposed to where I normally do it in Southern California. I came up with a friend, and my friend Brett, he's off in another spot checking out trees over in another side right now while I'm doing this video. And I really enjoyed recording this spotlight. It was a very long time coming. It's been over 3 years since I've been by red fir trees. And just come here to the Sherman Pass area. Appreciate these beautiful trees. Abies magnifica, variety Critchfieldii, Critchfield Red Fir. So this was Spotlight on Trees with Brian. I hope you found this video informative, interesting, fun to watch, and I hope you found it helpful in helping to identify red fir here in the Sierra Nevada. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on my next episode.